You know, it's funny how this whole moon versus Mars thing isn't exactly new. It's a debate that's been going on since like the very beginning of the space age.
Yeah, that's what blew my mind when I was reading that article.
Really?
Like, they were already talking about Mars missions back in the 1950s.
Wow.
We were barely figuring out how to get to the moon, and they were already dreaming about Mars.
Like, Mars has this hold on us, you know, this idea of finding another home out there among the stars.
It's pretty wild. But you're right. We can't forget about the moon and how important it was in that early space race.
Absolutely. It was like the ultimate battleground back then.
Total Cold War showdown.
Right.
Like, who could get to the moon first?
Exactly. It was less about scientific discovery and more about proving who had the bigger, better rockets.
Oh.
You know, a real power move on a global scale.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then once the U.S. landed there in '69, it's like the excitement died down a bit.
Yeah, the political urgency kind of faded and lunar exploration took a backseat for a while.
Right. But now here we are in the 2020s, and it feels like things are heating up again.
Absolutely. It's like a new space race is brewing.
It is. We've got NASA with their Artemis program trying to build a moon base.
Yep.
China and Russia are teaming up for their own lunar outposts.
Yeah.
And then there's SpaceX with their eyes firmly on Mars.
Yeah, they're not messing around.
It's like a cosmic game of Risk out there. Everyone wants a piece of the action.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's get down to the nitty-gritty here.
Mm-hmm.
If we're really comparing the moon and Mars as destinations, where do we even start?
Well, I think the most obvious difference is the distance, right?
Yeah. The article said it takes about 3 days to get to the moon.
Right.
But Mars, we're talking like 9 months.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant difference.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So is it just about travel time, or is there more to it?
It's way more than just travel time. We also need to think about complexity and risk.
Makes sense.
You know, being closer to the moon means missions are less risky, easier to abort if something goes wrong.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. We're not as far out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there are launch windows.
Launch windows. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I always struggle with that concept. It's like physics class all over again.
Well, think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to throw a ball to someone on a moving carousel. You have to time it just right. So the ball and the person meet at the right spot.
Okay, I can picture that.
So launch windows are kind of like those perfect moments in time when Earth and Mars are lined up just right to make the most efficient journey. And because the moon orbits Earth so much faster than Mars goes around the sun, those launch windows to the moon, they happen way more often.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So more frequent launch windows to the moon.
Exactly.
Less travel time, less risky. Okay, so we've got that. But what about when you actually get there? No matter which one you land on, what are we breathing?
Well, that's the catch. Neither the moon nor Mars has breathable air for us humans.
Yeah, I figured. It's funny, though, how movies make it look like you could just stroll around Mars without a care in the world.
Right, like it's just a normal day out.
Totally.
Yeah.
But the article said that Mars's atmosphere is like 100 times thinner than Earth's.
Yeah, and mostly carbon dioxide. So no matter where you land, you're going to need a spacesuit. No relaxing strolls on Mars just yet.
All right, so spacesuit it is. What about gravity? That's got to be weird, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely, Mars has about a third of Earth's gravity, while the moon has barely a sixth. It makes you wonder how our bodies would handle that in the long run.
Right, like would we turn into super jumping moon people?
Haha, maybe. But in all seriousness, it's a big concern. Living in low gravity for too long can cause all sorts of problems. Muscle and bone loss, cardiovascular issues, things like that.
Would Mars be better in that sense, since it has more gravity?
Well, here's something interesting. That weaker lunar gravity could actually be a huge advantage for getting further out into space.
Really? How so?
Imagine trying to launch a rocket from the moon. You'd need way less fuel to escape its pull because there's less gravity holding it down.
Oh, I see.
So lunar launches could be much more efficient and cost-effective. It could make the moon a fantastic launching pad for missions to Mars and beyond.
So the moon's weak gravity could actually help us get to Mars. That's kind of ironic.
Right, it's like this unexpected advantage that often gets overlooked.
Okay, so we've talked about distance, gravity, breathable air. What about resources? What kind of goodies are we talking about on the moon and Mars? The stuff we need to, survive and maybe even thrive.
Well, good news. Both the moon and Mars have water ice.
Okay, that's a good start.
Which is crucial for drinking water and also for making rocket fuel. You could say water is the gold of space exploration.
So both places have got that covered. But what about the things that set them apart? What's special about each one?
Well, the moon is thought to have a lot of helium-3.
Helium-3.
Yeah, it's this potential fuel source for clean fusion energy.
Oh, wow. That'll be a game changer.
Right. And there's also a lot of buzz about rare earth metals being plentiful on the moon. Those are super valuable for all sorts of technologies.
Okay, so the moon's got some serious potential. But what about Mars? I mean, the article made it sound like Mars might have what it takes to actually become self-sufficient, like a real Martian colony.
That's right. That's the big dream for SpaceX.
Yeah.
They think Mars has the resources we need to create a completely independent Martian society.
So what are they thinking? How would that work?
Well, even though the Martian atmosphere is thin, it does have carbon dioxide.
Right.
And SpaceX believes they can use that CO2 to create oxygen for breathing and methane for fuel. It's super ambitious, but if they can pull it off, it would be revolutionary.
I can see why Elon Musk is so excited about Mars. It's like this backup plan for humanity in case something catastrophic happens to Earth.
That's right. He's got this long-term vision of making humanity a multi-planetary species, and he thinks Mars, with its potential for terraforming and self-sufficiency, is the best that we have.
It's a bold vision for sure. But the article also mentions some tension between Musk's plans and what NASA has in mind, especially with SpaceX making so much progress with their Starship rocket.
Ah, yes. Here's where things get interesting. You've got NASA with their traditional approach relying on those established contractors like Boeing and their SLS rocket for the Artemis program. And then you have SpaceX operating more like a tech startup, moving super fast and innovating independently.
It's like two totally different styles clashing.
It is. And remember that part in the article about Jared Isaacman?
Yeah, the billionaire astronaut.
Exactly. He's been nominated to be the new NASA administrator, and he's super tight with Musk. So people are speculating that NASA might start shifting away from their expensive SLS rocket and look more towards SpaceX's Starship.
Wow, that would be a huge shakeup for the Artemis program.
It would. And it really highlights the growing influence of SpaceX in the world of space exploration.
So where does all this leave us? Is the moon destined to be overshadowed by Mars?
Well, I think we got to remember that space exploration, it's a long game. It's not a sprint.
Yeah, that's true.
The moon and Mars both have their own challenges and opportunities.
Definitely.
And I think it's very likely that they'll both play a role in our future in space.
So maybe it's not moon or Mars, but moon then Mars.
Exactly. You got it. The moon could be that crucial stepping stone, a place where we can develop the technologies and get the experience we need before we try those more difficult missions to Mars.
It's like a practice run before the big game.
Perfect analogy. You wouldn't just throw someone into the Olympics without any training, right?
Right.
The moon is our training ground. We can get comfortable living and working in space before we take on a bigger challenge like Mars.
That makes sense. One thing that really stuck out to me in that article about the moon versus Mars debate was the difference in how NASA and SpaceX approach things.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, right?
It's like they come from different planets.
I know. It's like comparing apples and oranges.
Totally. NASA, with all their history and experience, they're like the wise old sage of space exploration.
Yeah, they've got that slow and steady approach.
Right, with all those safety protocols and scientific goals.
Very methodical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you've got SpaceX. They're like the young upstart bursting onto the scene, all about speed and innovation.
Yeah, they're not afraid to shake things up.
Not at all. They're pushing boundaries, taking risks, trying new things, even if it means failing sometimes.
And they have had their fair share of failures.
They have.
Yeah.
But that's part of their fail fast, fix fast mentality.
It's a whole different way of thinking, and it's allowed them to make some serious progress in a very short time.
It really has. But, there's something to be said for NASA's cautious approach, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when you're talking about human lives. Safety has to be the top priority.
You can't rush that NASA's rigorous testing and careful planning have saved lives, that's for sure.
So maybe what we need is a combination of both approaches. The experience of NASA and the bold innovation of SpaceX.
I think you're absolutely right. We need that balance to really push to the limits of what's possible in space.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin. You need both to make it work.
Exactly. They complement each other. NASA brings that foundation of experience and safety, and SpaceX injects that drive to innovate and take risks.
It's like the ultimate space dream team.
Exactly. But speaking of dream teams, let's not forget about all the other players in the space race.
Oh yeah, it's not just the U.S. anymore.
Nope. We've got China, Russia, India. They're all making moves in space, too.
It's becoming a truly global effort.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that brings its own set of challenges and opportunities. You've got international cooperation, competition. It's a whole new landscape for space exploration.
It is, and it's exciting. But we also have to be realistic about the challenges. We're talking about space travel here. It's difficult, it's risky, and it's expensive.
No doubt about it. Even getting to the moon, which is relatively close, is a huge undertaking.
And then you've got Mars. It's like next level difficult.
For sure. That 9-month journey alone,
Yeah.
it's going to push astronauts to their limits, physically and mentally.
Yeah, you're talking about cosmic radiation, isolation. And once you get there, Mars is a pretty harsh place.
It's not exactly a walk in the park. We're talking about extreme temperatures, thin atmosphere, and no breathable air. It makes you appreciate just how special and fragile Earth is.
It really has. All those things we take for granted here, like air and water on Mars, those are luxuries that we'd have to work really hard to create.
Exactly. And that's why the idea of terraforming Mars, making it more Earth-like, is so fascinating.
It is. It's like a whole new frontier. But it's also incredibly ambitious and raises a ton of ethical questions.
For sure. Do we have the right to change a whole planet? What if there's life on Mars that we haven't found yet? These are big questions.
They are. And it's important to have these conversations as we continue to explore space.
Absolutely. We need to be responsible stewards of the cosmos. And that means considering the potential impact of our actions on other worlds.
I agree. Speaking of impact, we also need to consider the impact on the humans who are making these journeys. We're asking astronauts to push their bodies and minds to the limit.
That's right. We've already seen how space travel can affect physical health. Things like bone loss and muscle atrophy.
And what about the psychological effects? Being isolated and confined for months on end? That can't be easy.
No, it's not. It's a huge challenge, and we need to find ways to support the mental and emotional well-being of our astronauts just as much as their physical health.
I agree. It's easy to get caught up in all the cool tech and discoveries. But we can't forget that there are real people behind these missions.
Exactly. They're pioneers, they're heroes, but they're also human beings, and we need to treat them as such.
So what are some of the things we can do to support them? I mean, it's not like we can just send a therapist to Mars.
Well, not yet anyway. But there's a lot of research happening right now on how to mitigate the negative effects of space travel. For example, they're working on artificial gravity systems that could help prevent bone loss.
Wow, that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, right. But it's becoming more and more realistic. They're also developing advanced life support systems that can create closed-loop environments.
It's like a mini Earth in space.
Exactly. The astronauts could grow their own food, recycle their waste. It would be a self-sustaining ecosystem.
That's incredible. And what about the psychological side of things?
They're working on that too. There are virtual reality systems that can simulate natural environments. So astronauts can feel like they're back on Earth even when they're millions of miles away.
That's so cool. It's like having a little piece of home with you in space.
Right. And they're also improving communication systems so astronauts can stay in touch with their families back on Earth more easily. That can make a huge difference in terms of morale and mental health.
It's amazing how much effort is going into making space travel safer and more sustainable for humans.
It really is. It shows that we're starting to think long-term about what it means to live and work in space. It's not just about exploration anymore. It's about building a future for humanity beyond Earth.
And in the process, we're learning so much about ourselves and our own planet.
That's right. Space exploration has this incredible way of pushing us to think outside the box and solve problems that we never thought we could solve. And those solutions often end up benefiting us here on Earth as well.
It's like what goes up must come down. The technology and knowledge we gain from space exploration can have a ripple effect across all areas of society.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's so important to keep investing in space exploration, even though it can seem expensive and far removed from our everyday lives.
I totally agree. It's an investment in our future and the future of humanity.
Absolutely. By exploring the universe, we're not just expanding our knowledge of the cosmos. We're also learning more about ourselves, our place in the universe, and what we're capable of achieving.
I love that. It's about pushing the limits of what's possible.
Exactly. And who knows what we'll discover along the way. Maybe we'll find evidence of extraterrestrial life. Maybe we'll unlock the secrets of the universe. Maybe we'll even find a new home for humanity among the stars.
The possibilities are endless. It makes you realize how much there still is to explore and discover out there.
That's what makes space exploration so exciting. It's a journey into the unknown, and we're just getting started.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired right now.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's incredible to think about all the amazing things that are happening in space exploration right now. We're living in a truly golden age of discovery.
And it's only going to get more exciting from here.
Oh, absolutely. With all the brilliant minds working on this, I have no doubt that we'll continue to make groundbreaking discoveries and push the boundaries of human exploration for generations to come.
I can't wait to see what the future holds. All right, well, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive into the Moon versus Mars debate. It's been an incredible conversation so far.
I've really enjoyed it. It's always fun to talk about space with someone who's just as passionate about it as I am.
Me too.
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned so much already.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back for the final part of our Moon versus Mars showdown. All right, so we're back for the final round of our Moon versus Mars debate. And after all this talk about which one is better, I'm starting to think maybe that's not even the right question to be asking.
You know what? I was just thinking the same thing. It's easy to get caught up in this whole versus thing, But what if it's not about choosing one over the other at all?
Right. What if it's about the journey, not the destination?
Exactly. It's like that old saying. But think about it in this context. The journey to the moon or to Mars. That's where the real magic happens. All the innovation, the problem solving, the pushing the limits of human ingenuity.
And those breakthroughs, those aha moments along the way.
Yeah.
They don't just disappear.
Not at all. They ripple outward. They create new technologies, new materials, new ways of thinking. Think about all the things we take for granted today that came from space exploration.
Like GPS and satellite communication.
Exactly. And medical imaging, scratch-resistant lenses. So many things that have improved our lives here on Earth, all thanks to the quest to explore space.
So it's like this incredible cycle. We push ourselves to reach for the stars. And in doing so, we discover new things that end up benefiting everyone.
That's it. It's not just about escaping Earth, it's about making life better here too.
So maybe the real victory isn't planting a flag on Mars, but unlocking some new piece of knowledge that helps us solve climate change or cure a disease.
Exactly. Space exploration is an investment in humanity's future, and the returns could be far greater than we can even imagine right now.
It's a pretty inspiring way to think about it. So to all our listeners out there, keep looking up at the stars. And remember, the next time you hear about a mission to the moon or Mars, don't get caught up in the hype of the destination.
Think about the journey, the human spirit, the drive to explore the unknown. That's what it's all about.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the Moon versus Mars debate. It's been an incredible conversation.
It really has. Thanks for having me.
It was my pleasure. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those eyes on the stars.